All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the audio review show. This is JP.
And I'm James Deemer.
And today we're gonna review the latest IEMs from ZiiGaat. They're the ZiiGaat Cincotres and the ZiiGaat Doscinco. In brief, they're both two dynamic driver plus three balanced armature driver IEMs. So they're both hybrid configuration, and they got the two isobaric driver. The two dynamic drivers, they're the same. But they do have a little bit of a different balance armature configuration, so we'll get into that in detail a little bit later. But first, why don't we just do a quick unboxing? Um, it's very simple. They both have the same accessories, same unboxing experience. They come in a case like this, and inside you open it up, and it's just a small leather case. And you get two different types of ear tips, and they're pretty usable. I thought they're pretty decent. But very simple unboxing. And of course you get the cable. I think you can choose to get the cable in either 3.5 or 4.4, 2.5 balanced. I have to check the website again. But it's a pretty decent cable. James, you have any thoughts on the cable?
Yeah, the cable is really nice. It's supple, it's thin. I like a thinner cable. It has very little microphonics, which I like a lot. I'd say it's a great cable.
Yeah, I mean for the price, I think these are they're both 270 bucks. So for $270, I mean I think the cables are fine. They're pretty soft. They're not very plasticky, so they're good. And in terms of just design, I on the left, this is the Doscinco. On the right, this is the Cincotres. I don't know if you can see, but almost identical. I guess you can say they have a little bit of a different sparkle pattern, but basically the same.
Just to add a little bit, I believe the shells, and maybe you'd said this, I believe the shells are actually identical. So the fit is kind of amazing. It's a really fun A/B comparison. You can put the same tips on both and do a quick back and forth, which was neat. One thing that I did discover is that the shell, which appears to be opaque, if you shine light through it or it's in the sunshine, it is actually very dark, translucent, and you can see the drivers inside, which is fun.
We're gonna dive into each one of them in detail. So why don't we start with the Cinco Tres? Is that okay with you, James?
That's great. Yeah, let's do it.
So Cinco Tres. So I did say the two have different balance armature configurations. So the Cinco Tres, this one, I'm just reading my notes. This is the dual Sonion 26A05. That's their full range balance armatures. And then for the treble, they're using the Knowles 33518, which is pretty standard. It's been around for a long time. The Cinco, it's a little bit different. The balance armatures they're using, they have one 26A05. So one of them is the same as the Cinco Tres, but then they're also combining that with the Sonion 2354. This is also their other kind of full range. It's a little bit more bassier than the 26A05. And then the treble is the same as the Knowles 33518. So just the low mid range, they're kind of changing the different balance armature drivers, and then that's gonna show up later when we talk about the tuning and the graph. So similar, but a little bit different, and it makes quite a big of difference when it comes to what they actually sound like. James, do you want to go first? What was your thoughts on the Cinco Tres?
Yeah, yeah, I'll tell you my thoughts. So the Cinco Trace was the first one that I listened to of the bunch, and immediately it reminded me of the Sony IER M9 in its velvety smoothness. It's such a smooth, um, beautifully tuned IEM across the board. It's one of those IEMs that I think um, I found that it gave me all the detail and separation, spatial effects that I could want in an IEM without leaving anything behind. But it feels very polished. While it's airy, I wouldn't say that it's, in any way sibilant or in your face or brash. It's like a, it's funny. The picture that came into my mind was a James Bond in a Gucci velvet smoking jacket. It's confident, but understated, but you still notice everything. And I really did enjoy listening to the Cincotres quite a lot. What
Uh,
did you think, John?
let me just pop up the graph so we can kind of see what we're talking about. So here's the graph for the Cincotres. Can you see the graph?
Yep.
Listening to it for me, I'm surprised you said, it reminds you of the IR M9, right?
Mm.
Yeah, because for me, actually, what it reminded me of was the Hydation or Hydation Viento. For a long time, it was one of my to go to like standard for all IEMs that I listen and test and create. And the reason why it reminded me of the Hydation was because of this specifically this Pina at the three kilohertz. It's almost very precise, right on the dot. It peaks at 3 kilohertz, and it's got that slow gradual decay into the upper treble, and you get a little bit of resonance peak at 8-9 kilohertz. But it's a very reminiscent of the Hydation, and for that reason, I like the Cincotres uh, in the same way that I like the Hydation Viento, which is because that the this style of the pinot compensation, it makes the vocals very sharp. It gives them a good bite and a lot of clarity, especially vocals and instruments. But at the same time, I think so. I've heard some people describe the Viento as people who like Asian genres like J-pop or K-pop. A lot of these people tend to be more fans of the edition, and I can tell why because it makes the vocals very crisp and sharp. It's very nice for vocal centric genres. It really brings the vocals out of the mix right up and center, and you can really tell them apart. But I think I was a little mixed in my opinion for the Cincotres. I like the tuning, and this style of tuning, which, I think I would call it like a studio neutral. Basically you get that kind of very specific bass shelf, which ends around 200 hertz, and the flat mids, and then you get a nice pina compensation and a nice treble decay. So I call that like a studio neutral, and this is my preferred style of tuning generally. But the Cincotres, I think something about the timbre and the resolution kind of it didn't blow me away. I thought the whole time I was listening to it, I kind of thought, this is pretty average, pretty typical for this price range and for this configuration. And a lot of it for me, I think it has to do with the BA timbre. This really kind of sounded like the typical kind of a little bit plasticky BA timbre because of these balance armature drivers. Um, And I think, I don't know if it's because of that, but also the resolution kind of felt just a little, mm, not bad, but I would say average for this price range. So I was a little bit mixed on my opinion about the Cincotres.
I think I would agree with you on resolution. Maybe when I say it was sort of velvety, there's a slight veiled texture
I also thought it was
to,
hazy. Yeah.
yeah, hazy. That's an interesting, yeah, it's like you're maybe looking through gauze or something where I don't feel like it was lacking in a high frequency. Um, it was there, the detail was there, but the sort of energy was lost, especially compared to the Duo Cinco in the high frequency range for me.
Yeah, I think definitely a lot of haziness. I felt it in the mid-range too. Just something, I don't know if it maybe has a little bit higher distortion than what we would want or not,
Mm,
but then it
hmm.
was a little bit hazy. What do you think about the bass? I mean, it does have that two dynamic drivers.
Yeah, that isobaric configuration with those dynamic drivers really it packs a wallop. I would say the bass. it depends on the genre of music that I was listening to. Sometimes I found it really engaging. Sometimes I found it oh, slightly tubby, I would say, but generally speaking, it was confident and had decent decay. I listened to a track by Gregory Porter. Hey Laura is a track that I use, which is a jazzy track. It's got a double bass, stand-up bass, and I felt that it handled the double bass resonance really well. And there's a moment in the track where you hear a snap of the bass string, and it presented itself really nicely. I also think there's this sort of subtle Hammond B6 organ that's really, really low in the mix. And with a Cincotres, it was just beautifully syrupy and present. And I think maybe it's that kind of mid-range forward that was pushing that out a little more than I'm used to hearing, and in an enjoyable way.
Hmm. Yeah, I also thought the bass, I think it's tuned pretty well. I also thought it was quite impactful. It's very tight. The bass is very tightly controlled. But I think the bass also kind of, especially lower register instruments, it also kind of felt a little bit mushy and mangled. What I experienced was particularly it was hard to tell apart bass guitar notes from the kick drum. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of there, especially the kick drum was there, but then the distinct notes from the bass guitar in a lot of the tracks kind of felt a little bit too deep in the mix with the kick
Mm-hmm.
drum. So I thought it was good. The tuning is pretty good. The impact was good. The bass is very tight. It's crisp. But in terms of the definition, again in the bass, I also thought it was a little bit lacking.
Mm.
So yeah.
What do you think of the Duo Cinco?
The Doscinco. Should we move on to that? Let me just
Yeah, let's.
switch out the graphs. Very different, and this has to do with the changing the one of the balance armature drivers. So the 2354, the Sonion one that they're switching out, that one has a little bit more bassier low mid range. So that's kind
Mm.
of contributing to this, especially between 200 and 700 kilohertz, 700 hertz. There's that little bit of a raise. So the Doscinco definitely I thought it was a bit more of a more V-shaped signature. It's got the strong bass, but the mid-range can be a little bit scooped, and then you got the really bright and treble. So definitely a little bit more colored, definitely more colored than the Cincotres,
Mm.
Cincotres, which is much more neutral. But I was a little bit taken by surprise, and also I was a little confused because I normally prefer the neutral tuning. So I would normally prefer the Cincotres, but in this case, I found myself preferring the Doscinco, and a lot of that I think comes to the technicalities that I was kind of complaining about a little earlier. So I don't necessarily love the V tuning of the Doscinco. But the Doscinco sounded a lot more defined. It had a higher resolution, much higher resolution than the Cincotres. And it was quite a big difference for me. What did you think?
Well, spot on. I agree. Generally I preferred the Doscinco to the Cincotres, and I found that the resolution was better. The with the exception of maybe in some tracks that sort of scooped mids, or that the vocals being slightly less forward, everything else was just better for me. It was if the Cincotres is a velvet smoking jacket, the Duo Cinco is like a musical mosh pit. It
Mm,
required me to listen. I just felt so engaged listening to this IEM. It brought an energy. It was like, like it just brought things like sibilance close to the like too much, but just not. And the bass impact was like, wow, there's a lot going on here, but not over the edge. It's really pushing the boundaries of my comfort zone for what I like in an IEM, but it didn't bring anything too far. So it made listening really, really fun and engaging for me. I listened to a
Oh,
lot of different tracks.
yeah.
One of the things I listened to was there's a band called Knower, and they have a song called Overtime that's heavy drums, big synth, it's female vocals. And I found that in particular, like the hi-hat impact was so perfect with this IEM. It just was crisp and clean, but not sibilant or overpowering or crashy. It was done so well. That was one of the things that I took a note of that I enjoyed tremendously.
I think what you're describing there, and this I've kind of experienced the same thing. The Doscinco has a lot more dynamic range. The bass is much deeper, but the treble is also just as much crisper than the Cincotres. Cincotres, I kind of overall I would describe it as being very dry and very lean. On the other hand, like you said, the Doscinco is a lot more engaging. The sound is fuller. And even though, yeah, it kind of does feel like the mid-range is scooped, but because of that dynamic range, it just ends up sounding fuller, more engaging, than the Cincotres. And I think part of the technical reason, so I was just checking the box. So according to ZiiGaat, these two should have the same parameters, but that's not true. Because when
Mhm.
I didn't bring that up, but then when I was measuring both IEMs, actually the Doscinco has a lot higher sensitivity than the Cincotres. So I think
Mm,
definitely this driver combination, I think that's also affecting the total harmonic, the THD, the
mm.
distortion. So I think maybe that's kind of what we're witnessing, especially with the resolution and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I think I would say the same thing. Doscinco bass is stronger, bass is deeper, mid range is a little bit scooped, but it didn't bother me that much. The treble, and again, it's weird because the treble on the graph it looks like it should be less than the Cincotres, but upon actually listening to it, the treble, especially the upper treble, actually felt like it should be more. So
Big time,
yeah,
big time. Yeah.
this one kind of duped me a little bit.
I would keep, if we're going to wrap it up and say comparison, what would you do? I think I would say that they're both sets that I enjoy and would keep in rotation. The 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 Cinco Trace I'd probably use for mellow listening sessions, possibly if I'm watching a movie later at night and I just don't, need that kind of energy, or if I'm on a long plane flight or something like that, where it's just less engaging but still entirely enjoyable listen. And the Dos Cinco is that in your face, let's get down and party, um, really fun, energetic listen with tons of low end slam, high end sparkle, great separation, great detail, amazing extension.
Yeah, eh, almost the same. I think if I had to pick one of them, I would pick the Doscinco, which is surprising to me too. But I do think there is a usage case and a specific audience that would benefit from the Cincotres, and that would specifically be musicians, stage musicians, as well as audio engineers. Definitely Cincotres, um, it does have that neutral mid-range and the nice bite in the treble that a lot of musicians want and look for in studio monitors. So not only that, actually, I forgot to mention, I think the Cincotres does have better imaging and then instrument layering in the tracks. I think the Doscinco, because the sound is so much fuller, kind of all the all the tracks kind of felt a little bit more mumbled together. But the Cincotres, I thought it had pretty good layering, and the stereo imaging was pretty good too.
Mm.
So from a technical perspective, I think professional uh, musicians and engineers would benefit from the Cincotres. But in all any other case, for general listening, for people who just want to enjoy music, I think the Doscinco is a better choice.
So it's the moment of truth, thumbs up or thumbs down. Well, if I'm going to give you thumbs up or thumbs down for both the Doscinco and the Cincotres, I'm going to give you two big thumbs up for both of them. But I would say my thumbs are a little bit bigger for the Doscinco. That was my favorite. As you said, there's a use case for the Cincotres, and I still give it two thumbs up. Maybe it's one thumb up, one thumb not all the way up. But in terms of value, I think for roughly $250 street value is what they're selling for. It's a tremendous value. Great set. I think you could slap a $1,000 price tag, put them in a fancier box, and no one would blink an eye at either one of these.
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I would rank them that highly. I think for me personally, I think Cincotres, I'm gonna have to give it a thumbs down for the Cincotres just because I think this style of tuning, the tuning was good, but I think the technicalities could have been done better. So I'm gonna give the Cincotres a thumbs down just because it could have been better, and I think in the future we can make it better. But the Doscinco, oh boy. I think um in comparison I would put the Doscinco above the Cincotres. But if I were to go out and spend my own money in the $270 range, I don't know if I would buy the Doscinco either. Just because I mean in comparison it was better, but it's not my personal style of tuning. I don't really like V-shaped tunings. I prefer neutral tunings. Actually, that would be the only reason why I wouldn't buy the Doscinco with my own money. So definitely, for people who love music, who love the big bass, who like higher dynamics, I think yes, you should get the Doscinco. But for me, I think it might be a pass. Ugh, both two thumbs down for me.
Okay, fair enough.
Oof.
Fair enough. I
Anyways,
appreciate your honesty, JP.
no, yeah, I mean, it kind of hurts me to do this, but yeah, I think for me, not that they were both bad. I don't think they're horrible. I think they're worth what they are, but I think they could be better in both
Yeah,
scenarios. So that's my kind of reasoning.
that's why we're doing
Yeah.
this. Nice.
Um, yeah, but I mean, I think for everyone who has a chance, you definitely give the Doscinco and Cincotres a try. I think for most people, they'll enjoy it. And for actually for the price, I think they're quite good. So yeah.
Nice. Let us know in the comments what other IEMs you'd like us to review. I know I'm curious about reviewing the Hype 4, possibly the Singolo, Kiwi or Singolo, and a few others. But let us know if there's anything you want us to check out for you.
Yep. Anyways, thanks, James, for your time. And this was the review of the Doscinco and Cincotres.